to the show. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Don't forget, every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I'm gonna have a new interview, new opinion piece, or some horror news for you to come and check out. And throughout the week, I'm still dropping countless reviews in the world of horror, whether it's movies, TV shows, games, books, whatever. If you don't want to miss anything I'm dropping here on my channel, the best way to stay up to date is to get subscribed to my link tree. And you can do that by going to linktr.ee/T Scary Movie. If you get subscribed to my link tree, that's going to give you access to the YouTube page, the video versions of the show, your favorite podcasting platforms, the audio only versions of the show, to my Letterboxd page for my written reviews and movie rankings throughout the year, to my TikTok page for my short horror content including movie news and movie premieres, to my Twitch page for my horror gaming including The Thing Remastered and Phasmophobia for the PSVR 2, and to my Fangoria shop page where you can enjoy my 20% discount off anything in the Fangoria shop including a yearly subscription to the physical magazine. Take advantage of that, folks. Hit that subscribe button, as the more followers I have, more content I can put out for all of you. And don't forget that every month we are doing giveaways as well too. Here in the month of November, if you comment on any of the videos that I've put out, whether it's a review or a normal episode, you're going to be entered for a chance to win the novelization of X. That's right, folks. Tim Wagner, who has brought us quite a few adaptations of popular properties, especially in the horror world in the last 20 years, was recently taken to task of writing out Ty West's trilogy here in book form. X came out not too long ago. Pearl actually came out just a couple of weeks ago, and we're still getting our release of Maxine here in just a couple of months. This novelization is fantastic. If you are a big fan of the movie X like I am, this bad boy fills in all of those juicy details that you might have thought were missing from the finished film. It makes an already fantastic movie that much better. Get a lot of insight into what these characters are thinking. I'm gonna have my review coming out for this one here not too long from now, and then I got a special treat for y'all. But again, if you comment on any video in the month of November, chance to win the book here, folks. So make sure you do get a chance to win. So what are we talking about here tonight? Well, y'all, it is time for yet another episode of The Creep Tapes. Let's not waste any time though. Let's jump right into things here with Jeremy, the third episode here of the aforementioned Creep Tapes. Now, this takes a different approach from what we've seen from the other two episodes thus far, just as we know that Peachfuzz's whole habit is laying out some kind of bait to get his victims into his web, and then basically perverts that in order to ultimately take them out. And a lot of what we've seen so far across the two prior episodes and the two movies has really been a case of putting these potential victims into like these positions to where if they push back just a little bit, maybe if they actually didn't allow themselves to be placed in these uncomfortable positions, there's a chance that they might be able to fight back and also escape as well too. Like we saw that at the end of Creep 2, to where the potential victim was able to get away by fighting for her own life and not really going along with a lot of these weird mechanisms that Peachfuzz has set up throughout that film. And Jeremy kind of takes almost the same kind of approach, to where the victim that's coming is coming very much to trap Peachfuzz in this case. And obviously, like in the majority of what we've seen thus far, this victim, Jeremy, also has no clue who Peachfuzz actually is. Jeremy is a host of this online hidden camera show that basically exposes people for not being who they say they are. And in this episode of this show, Gotcha, that Jeremy hosts, he was looking to investigate this priest as a way of getting back at the church and the things that they lie about and the abuses that are committed, and just the way that in some places in the world, the church can take advantage of its parishioners. Now, from there, you can already tell that there's a bit of a personal investment here into this story with our lead character, Jeremy, in this episode. And we've seen the drive. In the first episode with Mike was there due to a job, get paid some easy money to film an acting reel, and then the money just keeps on coming. So of course Mike's gonna stay there because it's a lot of really good money to back out of an uncomfortable situation. With Elliot, again, this was on Elliot's list of birds that he just had to absolutely see, and he didn't really know Peachfuzz's involvement into him being out to where he was and that bird being in the place where they were. So again, he wasn't really under the false pretenses that Mike was either. And with Jeremy though, there's that investment that Elliot had, but it's more personal than that, because I don't want to demean anybody having like, a bucket list or this list of things they need to see and do before their life is over by any means there. But we do see Jeremy is very much invested in this exposure and, walks right into this uncomfortable, potentially dangerous situation, not thinking at all that the person that he might be interviewing might be psychotic. And that adds a little bit of commentary just in general with hidden camera shows and these prank shows and, these things that were such a big part, not in today's day and age, honestly, because we've kind of moved past that, but from, I don't know, what we say, like the mid 2000s, from like 2000 and maybe 2000 to 2010 or so, that was the big thing, was hidden cameras, catching people and not thinking about the empathy on the other side of it. And where we've kind of morphed into is that we're now very much into a world to where it's no longer about the person on the other side of the camera who we're filming. You having a camera doesn't stop somebody from knocking you the hell out in this day and age. And we've seen that to where these people go around saying, it's a prank, it's a prank, it's a prank, as they're about to get their ass beat. Like, that just stops things from happening. And we know without a shadow of a doubt, it would be hard to catch Peachfuzz off guard. So of course, with Jeremy thinking that he's going to be doing this whole expose on the church and on this one random priest there, he's under the impression that this guy has no idea what's going down. But again, we've watched this show, we've watched these movies, we know that cannot be the case here at all, and that again, Jeremy has just walked into the same trap that so many others have walked into time and time again. And with this case here, it's interesting to see Jeremy in real time, like a lot of these other victims, realize the danger that he might very well be in, but also realize that, it doesn't matter what the reward here from actually showing up and getting this interview could be, that he ultimately needs to get out of there. And with a lot of these other characters, of course, there was the financial incentive there. And with Elliot, there was the incentive of getting to actually see this long dreamed after bird that he's been trying to catch. But for Jeremy, there's nothing really there keeping him here. So the moment that he realizes that he might be in a bit of danger, he knows that it's time to get out. And I loved in this case that Peachfuzz, over the course of this episode and talking with Jeremy, keeps taking him out of his element, because Jeremy is obviously so used to catching these people that he's interviewing off guard and being the one to completely run the entire interaction. And Peachfuzz consistently keeps going at another angle, which doesn't allow Jeremy to really get in that comfortable position that he has, that he does with his victims, to where he's embarrassing them and suddenly pulling back the curtain on what this interview is truly about. And even when Jeremy does finally take that opportunity, it's almost like he's laughed at for that attempt, that, well, that was a good attempt, but what you're doing here isn't really working. And it's so interesting to see Peachfuzz deal with all of his different victims, because I've mentioned before that you kind of might think at a certain point that he's looking for just that right connection, and that might end up saving a certain victim's life. And at a certain point, again, I went back to Creep 2 watching this episode with Jeremy, because there were points to where he seemed to he wanted to connect with Jeremy more than Jeremy obviously wanted to connect with him, to where he might have actually been offering Jeremy a way out of this experience. And Jeremy just, of course, doesn't take that opportunity to kind of go along with it. And he's doing what any sensible person would do, and feels completely put off by the actions that are happening in front of him, and chooses to get out. And the way that religion is just abused here, the way that it is used against him, and clearly, again, pulling back from maybe something that Jeremy dealt with growing up in his childhood that has made him want to complete this episode of Gotcha, it's haunting the way that Peachfuzz comes at him with this. And there's actually a really fun chase scene in this one, which is not like we've gotten a little bit of that, but the fact that somebody actually kind of had the ability to get away and was in a position to maybe catch the upper hand. And of course, it still doesn't work out, but it's very cool to see that perspective that we don't really get a lot when it comes to Peachfuzz and his potential victims. This was very, very different feeling from what we've gotten in the show so far. And I'm loving the fact that thus far, they've presented very different perspectives of the way that he's interacted with each of his victims. And I was worried coming into the show that there would be just too much repetition, and we haven't really gotten that yet so far. So kudos Patrick Bryce, kudos Mark Duplass for another successful tape here with the Creep tapes. I'm excited to see how the rest of this plays out. I love seeing Peachfuzz getting more and more personal with his victims as these episodes are going on, because the more personal he gets, the more chilling and more thought-provoking it really can be, honestly. And you really have to stop and wonder about his empathy, because a lot of times these serial killer stories, the whole idea is that they just don't feel feelings like the rest of us. They're devoid of feelings, or they feel something too much or too little here. And it's interesting to see that no matter which way he's going, there just still doesn't seem to be that ounce of empathy coming from Peachfuzz at all. And I'm actually very interested. And I've mentioned Creep 2, great movie, but I mentioned Creep 2 a lot here during this review. But Creep 2 is really where we got to pull back the curtain, and Peachfuzz was being, again, just open and honest with his potential victim about who he was and what he was planning on doing. And we really got to see, to me at least, the closest insight to who he actually is. Now again, that could all be bullshit, because that's the game that he ultimately plays with all his victims. But each episode just feels a little bit more and more personable, and I love this idea that we're peeling back more and more and more layers to really get some ounce of truth about him. And I hope that's what we're leading up to by the end of this season, is that we do get something real, something honest out of him, regardless of whether it ends with that victim being dead, which of course is what it'll likely do. That's what I'm hoping that we get here with this show. So we'll see. You know, we still got a few episodes left here. We're not done yet. And I'm curious if y'all want to tell me here in the comment section as well, what do you ultimately hope to get from Peachfuzz in this season of the Creep tapes? Because if it's just getting him killing random victims and doing more of the status quo, that's fine, because it's quite excellent getting to see more and more of that. But if you got something else, let me know in the comment section for a chance for you to win a copy of the novelization of X. And hit that subscribe button, as I'm gonna be back here with more great reviews for y'all. I appreciate you checking this one out. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.